Hey, welcome to a video presentation of a group project by Chelsea, Dustin, Jessica, Abby, and Michael for Dr. Brewer's Persuasion class, fall 2019 at Appalachian State University. This is the second part of our campaign, which is called Life Over Party. We're presenting some messages, but more specifically, we're going to be presenting a message box and some of the persuasion theories that go into making that box. So quick reminder, campaign overview. We're trying to build support for banning automatic assault rifles among North Carolina's Republican women who are likely voters and live in North Carolina counties. So that's our target audience. So what we did is we created a message box, and this is a tool that can be used by members of the target audience to effectively persuade other members of that target audience in a way that motivates them to become engaged in the campaign. And our campaign, we have numeric specifics about increasing support for banning automatic assault rifles within this target demographic, and then some developmental goals about getting statements and letters of support from influential Republicans in these areas. And that's what this box is designed to do. It's designed to get our target audience engaged so that they can go to those members, those elected officials, and get them to take action, put pressure on the legislature. And ultimately what we want is a specific end goal, which is the passage of a state bill, a House Bill 86, that would ban automatic assault rifles and create some other restrictions. All right, so let's go forward. Our message box tool, this is what it looks like blank, and what it does is it's going to help members of our target audience create effective messages for other members of the target audience, and they're going to do so building on statements. They're going to build statements together from different pieces, and those pieces are, as you see, starting top left: values, problem, solution, and action. Give you a quick overview of what those do. Values are statements identifying shared values. They're intended to establish connection and recognize those shared values among the people who are communicating. And they also create a positive perception of the speaker by the receiver. So they recognize that this person's like me, we share the same values, I trust this person. The problem statements, they're going to frame the real problem as we see it. They're usually prefaced with a however or but, leading in from the value statements. I'll show you that in a minute. They present the conflict of values and actions and create that cognitive dissonance that this section in particular is built on consistency theory. And then it sets you up for the solution. And the solution is where we present the change that we want to see. Usually starts with a that's why statement. That's why we need to do this. That's why somebody needs to do something. And it is the logical solution for the problem that we presented. And then the action. This is what is targeted to our target audience. And if we were working on this issue and we had a member of our target audience trying to influence elected officials, like ultimately in the campaign does, well, we would keep this whole tool except swap out the action, because the action we want elected officials to take is different than what we want members of our target audience to take. Everything else would be the same. But the action statements present our theory of change. If you do this, then this will happen. It sets up the receiver as playing a vital role, and it's empowering. It gives people the opportunity to make a difference on an issue they care about. So let's get an idea of what these messages are that we created for our advocates to use and engage other members of the target audience. The value statements that we have are, making sure that my family is safe and protected is what matters to me. In my family, it's important we take care of each other and our neighbors. I was raised to take seriously my responsibility to protect my family. We deserve to know that our children are safe when they go to school, shopping, or to see a movie with their friends. I was taught that we serve each other and look out for those we care about. And the compassion and caring I hear about on Sundays stays with me every day of the week. So in these value statements, we have those embedded values of protection, family, community, caring for each other. And there's some religious overtones too, especially with that last one, what I hear on Sundays, right? So those are the values that we're trying to create the connection around. And that's what this conversation is going to be based on, those shared collective values. Now the problem is going to create that cognitive dissonance, right? Using consistency theory, we're going to be talking about how the values that they share is in conflict with the policies advocated for by the Republican Party, of which these women are registered voters and supporters of, and how those are in conflict with the protection and the community and the compassion that they care about. Problem statements include, we cannot be with our families to protect them all of the time and everywhere they go. Families like mine who hunt and are responsible gun owners are being used as pawns in a game of political football where losses are too often tallied by body counts of good people from families like yours and mine. My political party seems to care more about protecting gun manufacturers than it does about protecting our families. And my party seems to have more compassion for people who want to buy a weapon designed to use in battle than it does for my children who want to know they're safe when they walk into their school. The solutions that we want to present, they're all going to be the same. This is just a variation on the same thing of getting the legislature to take action. And they include, that's why my lawmakers need to pass a ban on automatic assault rifles. That's why the legislature needs to pass a ban on automatic assault rifles that better belong on the battlefield than on the ball fields in our community. That's why the legislature needs to pass House Bill 86 and make it clear that our families matter more than someone's ability to have a military-grade weapon without knowing how to use it. And that's why lawmakers in Raleigh need to start acting like our families matter as much as special interest groups and ban assault rifles that can be used to make our community the center of the next national tragedy. And then the action that we want people to take. We want them to become engaged in the campaign. So if we Republican women work together, we can move the party we love to recognize the importance of putting family values at the center of our mission. We need women like us to stand up and make it clear to our local elected officials that we cannot wait any longer to protect our families. If we work together, we pressure elected officials of our party to recognize that our children's right to be safe is more important than someone's ability to buy a weapon that belongs on a battlefield. And it's going to take us working together and talking to other Republican women if we're going to make sure that our families are as safe when they leave the house as they are when they're in it. Okay, so those are the messages that we have, and we're going to show you how an advocate would use this stringing together values, problem, solution, action, and then we'll get to some of the theories behind it. All right, so for the first one, someone could make this statement, making sure that my family is safe and protected is what matters most to me. We cannot be with our families all the time and everywhere they go. That's why the legislature needs to pass a ban on automatic assault rifles that better belong on our battlefield than on ball fields in our community. And we need women like us to stand up and make it clear that our local elected leaders know that we cannot wait any longer to protect our families. All right. So that's one message that we could string together using this tool. Another one, let's follow the yellow arrows real quick. I was raised to take seriously my responsibility to protect my family. However, my political party seems to care more about protecting gun manufacturers than it does about protecting our families. That's why lawmakers need to start acting like our families matters as much as special interest groups and ban automatic assault rifles that can be used to make our community the center of the next national tragedy. It's going to take us working together and talking to other Republican women if we're going to make sure that our families are as safe when they leave the house as they are when they're in it. Okay. A third one. And again, you can string any of these together. The compassion and caring I hear about on Sunday stays with me every day of the week. However, my party seems to have more compassion for people who want to buy a weapon designed to use in battle than it does for my children who want to know they're safe when they walk into their school. That's why the legislature needs to pass House Bill 86 and make it clear our families matter more than someone's ability to have a military-grade weapon without knowing how to use it. And if we Republican women work together, we can move the party we love to recognize the importance of putting family values back at the center of our mission. All right. Now, I said we could mix these up. I'm going to do that real quick, and then we're going to get into some of the theories. All right. So here's the red one that we just used a minute ago. Let's change it. Let's go from follow the red arrows, and we're going to follow the blue ones now. So we're going to do this. This is our new message. Making sure that my family is safe and protected is what matters most to me. However, my political party seems to care more about protecting gun manufacturers than it does about protecting our families. That's why lawmakers in Raleigh need to start acting like our families matter as much as special interest groups and ban assault rifles that could be used to make our community the center of the next national tragedy. And if we work together, We can pressure our elected officials who are in our party to recognize that our children's right to be safe is more important than someone's ability to buy a weapon that belongs on the battlefield. All right, so that's the tool we created. This is what it looks like for our target audience. And I'm going to pause this. We're going to come back in just 1 second, and I will show you what the theories are behind this, how it's built, and why we think it's effective. All right, so now let's look at the value statements that we went over in the message box and how it is social judgment theory in action. So on this slide, we have a list of those value statements that we went over. They revolve around safety, protection, responsibility, community, and even some religious undertones in some of these values here. Now, if we look at social judgment theory in relation to these values, we see that social judgment theory suggests that the beliefs and biases of the target audience are key elements in deciding what type of message will be most effective. Now, we put this in action by recognizing the beliefs and biases of our target audience. And the key elements of those are the core components of these value statements. We also recognize that people in our target audience are not going to evaluate these messages on merit alone, as social judgment theory tells us. So it's not just that our arguments that we get to with the problem, the solution, and the action are going to be logical for these folks. We're relying on these values and associations that people have with them. Essentially, we are trying to get into the attitude and make sure that people are deciding to accept this position based on some of those anchor points that they already have, and how those very large anchors of their values, family values, that connect them with their community, with their family, with the person they're speaking with in this situation, which is another person who is similarly situated, and talking about engaging them on this issue. Social judgment theory also includes ego involvement. So the more relevant the issue is as a self-image, the stronger the anchoring opinion, social judgment theory tells us. One reason we're confident that these values-based messages are going to work is because of their reliance on ego involvement. And when someone says one of these value statements, that I'm making sure that my family is safe and protected is what matters most to me, the ego involvement there is the receiver coming to the same conclusion, identifying that to them too, that is what matters most to them. You know, that family is important to them and taking care of each other. To them, that's an anchor point as well. So that's why we think we're hitting all of these anchor points in social judgment theory with these value statements. And it's a big component of the first building block component of this communication, using this tool for persuasion. And then the last thing of social judgment theory that we have to note on this is the including of the latitude of acceptance, where arguments are more successful. So these are the arguments, these are the value statements that fall within that latitude of acceptance. It's easy for people to agree with this. It's easy for people to identify. It's easy for them to see how this resonates with them and hits their anchor points. It's close in proximity to what they already believe. This isn't a leap. This isn't a stretch. This isn't asking someone to change anything. This is affirming something that someone already knows. So that is how the use of social judgment theory in action works for the first part of this message box. All right, so now we are back to our message box. And next we are going to take a look at the problem statements and how they are used to establish cognitive dissonance using consistency theory. So these problem statements that we used in the message box are meant to create that conflict for the receiver between the values that they hold of wanting to protect, provide safety, community, those values, and pit them against the conflict of supporting policies that allow the sale of automatic assault rifles that in turn make their families less safe, make their communities less safe. So again, we're not really creating that conflict, but we're bringing it up to the surface and making sure that our receivers recognize that there is this conflict between values and an advocated policy based on their political choices. So these are the problems that we came up with as far as messages in the message box, and recognizing that we can't be with our families all the time everywhere they go, and that while we may be responsible gun owners and hunters, that far too often families like ours are the ones who are victims of tragedies. And the political parties care more about industry than their families. You know, we're the ones who care about our families, not political parties. And you know, when it comes down to compassion, they see that their political party has more compassion for someone who wants to have a weapon that's designed to use in war, as opposed to their children being safe. So these are the conflicts that we're bringing up to the surface and using consistency theory to support. Bringing these in, you know, the text tells us that consistency theory applies when there are the apparent contradictions between connected attitudes or behaviors, and we're going to force a realignment with those. So using these problems and the values that we used earlier with the social judgment theory, we are going to force our listeners to have some sort of realignment. And then when that attitude is inconsistent, that mental stress, the cognitive dissonance that we talked about, that conflict is going to be present in there. This also uses consistency theory by recognizing that our target audience holds strong beliefs about the safety and protection of their families. And supporting the policies of ownership of automatic assault rifles is something that makes their family less safe, knowing that assault rifles can be used on children and cause future tragedy. The safety of their families being threatened every time they leave the house, made possible at least in part by the policies that they've supported. All right. Also, you know, with Republican women, and we have a certain segment of our audience, not all women are mothers, but we do target mothers at one point as a subgroup. Being someone's mother, but also daughter or wife, need to be clear that when the Republican Party policies conflict with protecting their families, the values connected with the families are a higher priority than the policies associated with politics. And so that's that conflict, that's that dissonance that is there. There's no consistency. And what they're looking for, what we're looking for from our target audience, is for them to choose consistency by prioritizing those family values over political loyalties. And then how we're asking people to reconcile this dissonance is we want them to become advocates within their communities. And we want them to build power among people who share their characteristics, right? We are asking people to work together to solve a problem. And that's the way that we're going to motivate them to action. That's the way we're going to get them to move from this dissonance and this inconsistency between ideology and action and create some consonance there, and reconcile the two in a way that the values dominate. So looking through, we went through social judgment theory, how it relies, we went through our values and recognized how they rely on social judgment theory. We looked at our problems that we presented and how they rely on consistency theory. Solutions are just solutions. Actions, don't have another slide for this, and these are a little less strong arguments for as actions being motivating factors, but there are some traits of attribution theory in the action arguments, and there are some traits of stimulus and response, right? So for the stimulus and response, you know, we recognize by engaging these women on these issues and values that are very close to them, that they have those anchor points for. We want that conditioned response, and we want that conditioned response to be the protective, the nurturing, the siding with the families. And we want them to recognize that the consequences are going to be important to take into account for that. You know, we think that looking at this, and another reason stimulus and response may be applicable here is that you know, it's kind of predictable. I mean, if you put, if you kind of think through what's acceptable and what's unacceptable, and putting someone's family in danger is unacceptable. And so putting that out there as a stimulus, as a potential danger, or at least making sure it's recognized as the existing conflict, hopefully we get the reaction that we're expecting. And then for attribution theory, people are going to be thinking through the motives, behaviors, and reasons for the influencer or persuader addressing someone. And the receiver is going to wonder what their motives are. And as much as we can make it clear that the motives are those shared values, we get a long way of making sure that our source is a trusted source, our messenger is trusted, and that they are well received. I think for this, we're going to mostly be relying on, or the part that's most applicable for the action in attribution theory is the dispositional and identifying the personal and internal factors that affect people's behaviors, and we're trying to bring those to the surface. So looking at our message box again, after revisiting the theories that support these arguments, this is what it looks like. This is what it's built on, and this is why we think it's going to work for our specific target audience to achieve our specific campaign objective. And again, that is to engage women who are registered Republicans and likely voters in rural North Carolina counties to support North Carolina state law that would ban automatic assault rifles. We think this is a tool that we could have some members of our target audience who already agree with us to engage other members of our target audience and create those effective arguments. We think that this could also be used for creating a number of messaging materials. Again, there's so many messages that can be generated by picking one of the values, one of the problems, one of the solutions, one of the actions. It compounds. I mean, and there are, I don't know exactly how many, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are over 100 messages that could be created off of this one box. And that would be helpful for social media posts, letters to the editor, conversations with people, any number of situations where one is going to be talking about these issues in situations with that audience. I mentioned earlier in the presentation that this could be used as well with different audiences who might share some of the same values just by switching the action. And part of our campaign, we want the women we engage to engage their elected officials and get them to write letters to the editor or put pressure on state legislators, knowing that, it's those local elected officials who state legislators are scared of, that might run against them eventually, right? Who might be seeking higher office soon. And so we could very easily make a message box for elected officials that our target audience could use while speaking with them that had different actions. And that would look like this. So same values, same problems, same solutions. But the ask for an elected official is if you make a public statement or write a letter to the editor, it'll demonstrate responsible leadership for our children and send a clear message that you care about our families and let lawmakers know that you're willing to act if they aren't, right? Letting them know that we need Republican leaders like you to speak up and make it known that it's time to put our families first. And then if you write a letter to the editor in the local paper, it'll let our local legislative delegation know that leaders like you want change and are ready to step up to the plate if they aren't able to provide the responsible leadership that we deserve, right? So this is drawing again more on that stimulus response theory of knowing that legislators and politicians, even in lower offices, are considering running for higher offices, and knowing that the prodding, the urging them could get them thinking about that again as well, and maybe motivate them to action. All right, so that is our message box, the theories behind them, and what they look. Again, this was part 2 of our campaign presentation, Life Over Party, by Chelsea, Dustin, Jessica, Abby, and Michael for Dr. Brewer's class, Persuasion, Fall 2019. Thank you very much.